If you or someone you care about depends on wheelchair assistance at the airport, this video could spare you from one of the most frustrating and frankly sometimes degrading experiences in modern travel. Because here is the reality. The wheelchair assistance system at airports was built to support you. But in 2026, it is filled with gaps, delays, and fine print policies that airlines quietly rely on you never discovering. We have dug deep into exactly how this system operates. The damage claims, the TSA rights, the tipping culture, the pre-boarding rules that are not actually automatic. And we are walking you through 7 things that will completely transform how you travel with mobility assistance. Stay with us because secret number 6 is something that most travelers, even those who fly frequently, get entirely wrong. Welcome to US Updates Hub, where we draw on experience from hundreds of flights to bring you simple, practical, and genuinely useful travel tips and strategies. Let us get right into it. Here is the very first mistake people make, and it occurs before they even step out of their home. Most travelers who require wheelchair assistance assume they can simply request it when they arrive at the airport. Walk up to the check-in counter, mention the need, and the airline handles everything from there. And technically, yes, that is how it is supposed to work. But here is what actually happens in practice. When you make your request on the day of travel, you are placed into a general queue. And depending on the airport, the time of day, and the staffing levels, which in 2026 remain inconsistent at many major hub airports, you could find yourself waiting for a considerable amount of time. We have heard from travelers who waited more than 45 minutes for a chair that was supposedly already on its way. Far from ideal. The smarter approach is to request wheelchair assistance at the moment you book your ticket, not the day before your flight, not when you check in online, at the actual time of booking. Every major airline provides a field for this. Sometimes it appears under special assistance, sometimes under accessibility services. And when you make your request early, you are flagged in the system from the very beginning. Gate agents are aware, ground crew is informed, and the chair is arranged ahead of time. And here is the detail that most travelers completely miss. If your itinerary includes a connecting flight, you need to request assistance for each individual segment of your journey separately. A single request does not automatically cover your entire trip. Confirm each leg. Take a screenshot of the confirmation. Bring it with you to the airport. This next one is genuinely distressing, and we want you to be aware of it before it happens to you. If you travel with your own personal wheelchair or mobility scooter, the airline is obligated to transport it as checked baggage at no charge on virtually every U.S. carrier and many international ones. That part sounds excellent. The problem lies in what happens to your equipment between the gate and the cargo hold. According to U.S. Department of Transportation data, airlines mishandle, meaning they damage, delay, or lose more than 10,000 wheelchairs and scooters every single month within the United States alone. That figure has not improved in any meaningful way over recent years. And when a custom power chair worth thousands of dollars comes back bent, scratched, or completely non-operational, the claims process is slow, aggravating, and frequently results in inadequate compensation. Here is what you should do before every single flight. Take out your phone and record a brief video of your chair or scooter before you hand it over to airline staff. Walk around the entire device. Document its condition, show any pre-existing marks or scuffs so they cannot later be attributed to the flight. Do this at the gate right before the equipment goes down to the cargo area. Then when you land, inspect your equipment immediately before you leave the jet bridge area. If there is any damage whatsoever, report it on the spot to the airline's baggage office before you exit the airport. Once you leave the airport premises, your ability to negotiate drops considerably. Also, and this is worth being aware of, airlines are required to provide a temporary loaner wheelchair if yours is delayed or damaged upon arrival. You can and absolutely should request this immediately. Let us discuss something that nobody really explains with any clarity, and that is the practice of tipping for wheelchair assistance. Here is the reality of the situation. The attendants who push airport wheelchairs are frequently contracted workers, not direct airline employees. And at many airports across the United States especially, their compensation structure is heavily dependent on gratuities. This is not the airline's official published policy. There is no formal tipping guide anywhere. But if you have ever noticed that certain travelers seem to receive faster service, more help with their luggage, and a smoother connection experience, this is frequently a contributing factor. A standard tip for a brief assist within a single terminal is in the range of $3 to $5. For a longer push across a large airport or assistance navigating a tight connection, $5 to $10 is more appropriate. If your attendant assists with your bags, waits with you at the gate, or goes genuinely above what is expected, tip accordingly. Now, to be absolutely clear, you should receive quality service regardless of whether you tip, but understanding how this system actually functions means you can work within it to your advantage while also showing genuine gratitude to workers who perform physically demanding and often underappreciated labor. Keep small bills easily accessible, not buried in your checked luggage. Place them in your jacket pocket or a small pouch you can reach comfortably while seated. TSA screening is stressful for any traveler. For passengers who use mobility devices, it can feel even more overwhelming, particularly when agents provide unclear instructions or seem uncertain themselves about the correct procedures. So here's what you are actually entitled to know. You are never required to remove yourself from your wheelchair for the screening process. TSA officers may ask you to stand or transfer if you are able to do so on a voluntary basis, but it is not a mandatory requirement. If you cannot stand or transfer, or if doing so would cause you pain or create a risk of injury, you state that clearly. Simply say that you are not able to transfer, and they are required to conduct a pat-down screening instead. You can also request a private screening room at any point during the process. This is your right. You are not obligated to explain your medical condition in detail to anyone. Power wheelchairs and mobility scooters will typically undergo a separate X-ray or swab process for explosive trace detection. This is standard procedure. What is not standard, and what you should absolutely push back against, is if an agent attempts to collapse or disassemble your chair without your guidance. You have the right to instruct them on how your equipment should be handled. Consider bringing a card or a brief printed note if your chair has specific handling requirements. And if at any point you feel your rights are not being properly respected, ask to speak with a TSA supervisor. You can also request a passenger support specialist, which is a specifically trained TSA officer. Available at any checkpoint, at any airport, at absolutely no cost. The vast majority of travelers have never even heard of this option. Now you have. Quick question before we continue. Have you or someone you have traveled with ever had a negative experience with airport wheelchair assistance? Perhaps a lengthy wait, damaged equipment, or a confusing moment at TSA screening. Share your experience down in the comments. Your story might genuinely help someone else who is watching this video. This next one surprises a lot of people, and it creates genuine anxiety at the boarding gate. Pre-boarding, which means boarding the aircraft before the general passenger groups, is available to travelers who need additional time or assistance getting settled. But here is the critical detail. It is not always automatic simply because you requested wheelchair assistance. At many airlines, you still need to inform the gate agent that you wish to pre-board. If you are sitting quietly in the waiting area expecting your group to be called and nobody identifies you, you could miss the window entirely and end up boarding in the middle of a crowd, which completely defeats the purpose. The moment you arrive at your gate, go directly to the gate agent, or have your travel companion do so, and state clearly that you have requested wheelchair assistance and would like to pre-board. That is all it takes. They will make a note of it and call you first. Here is something else worth knowing. Under the Air Carrier Access Act, airlines are required to provide pre-boarding to passengers with disabilities who identify themselves and make the request. This applies to U.S. carriers and foreign carriers operating flights to or from the United States. So this is not a courtesy or a favor. It is a federal requirement. One additional detail. If you are flying with a travel companion, most airlines will permit one companion to board with you during the pre-boarding process. Confirm this at the gate before boarding commences. Policies differ slightly from one carrier to another, but it is almost always granted when asked. If you are traveling with a family member or friend who is providing assistance, there are some important boundaries that neither of you may be aware of. And getting this wrong can create friction at precisely the worst moments. Airport wheelchair attendants and airline staff are there to assist you, the passenger. They are not there to take direction from your companion. This may sound like a minor point, but it creates awkward situations on a constant basis. If your companion begins giving instructions, redirecting the attendant, or speaking on your behalf without your involvement, it can slow the entire process down and sometimes generate unnecessary tension. The smarter approach, and the more respectful one, is to let the traveler who needs assistance lead the communication wherever possible, and have the companion step in only when genuinely necessary. If you are the companion, your role is support, not management. Now here's the other side of that. If the passenger has cognitive difficulties, hearing loss, or communication challenges, the companion absolutely should step in and advocate clearly. In that situation, introduce yourself right at the beginning. Something along the lines of explaining that you are traveling with your family member, that they have a specific condition, and that you will be helping with communication. That single statement sets the appropriate expectation and keeps everything moving efficiently. Also, companions cannot accompany you through TSA screening unless they hold a boarding pass. If you require assistance through security and your companion is not flying, you can request a gate pass at the airline check-in desk. Some airlines provide them, some do not. Call ahead and inquire before you arrive at the airport. Here's the portion of the wheelchair assistance system that breaks down most frequently, and almost nobody discusses it. Departure assistance is generally better coordinated. You request it, it gets flagged in the system, and there is a chair waiting, or at least nearby. But arrival assistance is where things consistently fall apart. When a flight lands, the wheelchair attendant assigned to meet you has to be notified that your flight has arrived, navigate to the correct gate, and be present before you need to move. In a busy airport where gates change and flights arrive early or late, this coordination fails on a regular basis. We have heard from travelers who sat on a jet bridge for 20, 30, even 40 minutes, waiting for assistance that never materialized or that arrived at the wrong gate entirely. Here is what to do. Before your flight touches down, ask a flight attendant to radio ahead and confirm that wheelchair assistance is standing by at the gate. Most flight attendants will handle this without any hesitation if you simply ask. It takes 30 seconds and dramatically improves your chances of a smooth arrival experience. If you land and there is no attendant waiting, do not simply sit and hope for the best. Ask a flight attendant to contact the gate agent directly. If you have a connecting flight, communicate your connection time immediately. Airlines have procedures in place for expedited assistance when connections are tight, but you have to speak up and make the situation known. And if your assistant simply never appears, and you miss a connection as a result, that is a compensable event under airline policy. Document everything. Note the time, the gate number, the flight number, and report it to customer service before you leave the airport. The single most empowering thing any traveler with mobility needs can do is understand the Air Carrier Access Act, because this is the federal law that governs how U.S. airlines must treat passengers with disabilities, and the vast majority of travelers have never read a single word of it. Here is what it covers. Airlines cannot impose extra fees for wheelchair assistance or for transporting your personal mobility device. They must provide assistance from the curb to the gate, through connections, and all the way to baggage claim. They must allow you to keep your manual wheelchair until the gate if you prefer not to use an airport-provided chair, and they must respond to complaints regarding disability-related issues within 30 days. If any of these provisions are violated, you have two courses of action. First, speak to the airline's complaints resolution official. Every U.S. airline is required by law to have one available at the airport. This is not a general customer service representative. Ask for them specifically by title. They have actual authority to resolve issues on the spot. Second, if the matter is not resolved satisfactorily, you can file a formal complaint with the U.S. Department of Transportation at transportation.gov. Maintain records of names, times, flight numbers, and photographs if relevant. Complaints are genuinely reviewed, and they contribute to enforcement patterns over time. And this is precisely why understanding this information matters. Airlines are large, complex operations. They are not always intentionally making your experience more difficult. but they are optimized for efficiency, not for individualized care. The travelers who achieve the best outcomes are the ones who understand what they are entitled to and request it clearly and calmly. So let us bring everything together. Wheelchair and mobility assistance at airports is more complicated than it ought to be. The system exists, the regulations are in place, but there are significant gaps between what airlines are supposed to do and what actually occurs on the ground. And those gaps tend to impact the travelers who need the smoothest experience the most. What separates a stressful trip from a manageable one is almost always preparation and knowledge. Request assistance early at the time of booking. Document your equipment before every single flight. Understand your TSA rights thoroughly. Ask to pre-board and do not assume it happens automatically. Understand how the arrival assistance system works and speak up before your plane lands. And if something goes wrong, you now know exactly who to ask for and where to file a report. Travel in 2026 rewards the informed traveler. And if you are caring for an older parent, a spouse, or anyone with mobility needs, share this video with them. The 7 things we covered today could genuinely transform their next trip. If you want to go even deeper on traveling with less stress and greater confidence, we have a comprehensive video breaking down the biggest airport security mistakes that slow travelers down, including several that specifically affect passengers with medical devices and mobility aids. We will put it on screen now and include a link in the description for you to watch next. And if you found this useful, please hit subscribe to join us back here every week at US Updates Hub for more practical, straightforward travel tips and strategies. We will see you in that next video soon.